If I put it into slideshow mode, can you still see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So are you just going to introduce me and then I'll...
That's right. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, evening. I know we have some folks joining from other parts of the world. Welcome to IoTSF Houston Chapter webinar, which is, our monthly webinar. We do this once a month. And starting, I guess this is our first one this year. We went quiet for a couple of months. We're just getting ready. The Internet of Things is rapidly transforming our world, and so we are here in the Houston community trying to bring some of the industry thought leaders, researchers, and enthusiasts to share knowledge, best practices, and solutions for securing our connected world. So before we delve into today's webinar, I have a few quick housekeeping announcements to ensure that everyone has a smooth and enjoyable experience. We'll have a dedicated Q&A at the end of the webinar. So I'll activate the Q&A, and you'll be able to use the space on the right-hand side to actually type in your questions or comments that you can send it to us. Your feedback is very valuable to us. So following the webinar, you will receive a brief survey. We kindly ask you to take a few moments to share your thoughts and suggestions. Your feedback helps us to improve our future events. And thank you for your attention. Without further ado, let's get started with today's webinar. I'm going to talk a little bit about Grace before I hand over the mic to her. So in today's webinar, we'll be discussing securing the future, unlocking IoT potential with ioXt certification. We're honored to have Grace Burkhardt, Director of Operations at ioXt Alliance, as our presenter. Grace is a leading figure in IoT security landscape. As a Director of Operations at ioXt Alliance, she plays a pivotal role in establishing baseline security requirements to cultivate a safer environment for all IoT technologies. And I'm sure she can tell you a lot about it in a lot better way than I can. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over the virtual microphone to Grace. Grace, it's all yours.
Thank you, Durgesh. And thank you, everyone, for joining me here today. I am very excited to talk about IoT standards, which I know may not sound super exciting, but with everything that's going on in today's world, I think it is. And I think that you'll get a lot out of what's going on today. So I just want to start with a little bit of an intro of who ioXt is and what we do. So we are the global standard for IoT security. Our mission is to build confidence in Internet of Things through multi-stakeholder, international, harmonized, and standardized security and privacy requirements, product compliance programs, and public transparency of those requirements and programs. We are focused really right now on smart home, smart building, cellular IoT, such as phones and tablets, and mobile applications. But we are always looking to expand into other industries, and I'll touch on that a little bit more during this presentation. So who are we? We have over 600 members in over 50 countries. You'll see some of our major contributors here on the right side of the screen. But we have a lot of engagement and in different ways. And so to get into that, just give me one more second, but essentially what ioXt is built on are 8 security pledges. They can be grouped into 3 different sections, one being security. You'll recognize, no universal passwords, secured interfaces, proven cryptography, security by default. And then we usually see security, obviously, in North America. We see a little bit more on upgradability and transparency in Europe, but we do want to incorporate that into our standards. So with upgradability, you see automatic security updates and verified software. With transparency, you're going to see security expiration date and vulnerability reporting programs. So all of this to say, we take those pledge items and we build out what we call security profiles. You can also think of this as test conformity assessments, essentially. So we have test cases that go and define, all right, what is needed to pass for certification. So each test case has prerequisites that a manufacturer would need to provide to a testing lab or other testing method, which I'll get into. But then with that, they also have what are the test steps? What's the acceptance criteria? Maybe some additional information that pertains to each test case. And so what comes out of that are these security profiles. And so you'll see here, we have our base profile. All the ones here in dark pink are going to be completed profiles, and the one that is in light pink is still being worked on currently. But you'll see they range all over the place: smart speaker, network lighting controller, building network controller. Our base is just the bare minimum requirements when it comes to security for devices. So that could be any device that comes through. Obviously, if you have more specific device, such as a residential camera, for example, that comes with different security and vulnerabilities and threats. And so that's why these profiles were created. We realize that not all IoT devices are created equal. And so therefore, we bring in experts for each industry to create these profiles. So when we were working on residential camera, we took industry experts and we said, okay, what are the threats? Where's the just to show you here on the screen, we're looking at the threat model and analysis. We're defining what's within scope, what's out of scope. We're looking at beginning of the device's life, just the normal device operation, and then also end of device life. We're creating these test plans. So we go through pretty much step-by-step process and figure out, okay, what do we need to make a profile? And it's very exciting, actually, because we have great conversations with a lot of different people within the industry. You get a lot of different viewpoints. Sometimes we get in our own heads, right? Where it's like, okay, well, I only deal with the device in this way. And someone else may come in and say, well, I deal with it in a different way. And you're really considering all the different scenarios and situations that could impact the device. And I'm going to jump just ahead a little bit to show you what that looks like visually. So here is our base. You'll see that we have several different levels of security. The yellow line shows which ones are required to pass this specific profile. And then when you go to another profile, you'll see we have extended that required line. So they all kind of jump around. They're all a little different. Like I said, going back to how they're all made differently, they require different test cases and security for each one. So I just wanted to highlight what this looked like and how they changed. So going back just a bit, there are two methods of certification. And so everybody is very familiar with method number 2, which is third-party lab assessment. So we work with several different authorized labs. They go through a very extensive verification process. We actually are in the process with a couple more. And so what someone will do, a manufacturer will come in to our ioXt portal. They will enter their device's information, and then they will send that off to the lab. Then they send the device to the lab. Lab does all their testing. They send the results back to the manufacturer. Manufacturer reviews. They send it to us. We review. And then if there's any missing information or clarification needed, there's usually some back and forth with the manufacturer and the labs. That is all done before submitting. And then once it's submitted, we will review. And if it all looks good, you gain certification. If not, again, there's still time for it to be fixed or additional information is provided so that it can pass. Then the one that maybe people are not as familiar with is what we call verified self-attestation. So very similar process, except that the manufacturer is entering their information and then uploading all the evidence needed for each test case. So this could be, URLs or documentation or screenshots or videos, just a checks and balance, right? To make sure that if they say they have XYZ, we are seeing that they actually do have X, Y, and Z. This helps a little bit in the sense of scalability when it comes to labs. They can only take so many devices at a time. It also helps with costs because we all know that labs can be very expensive at times. So if you have, a couple devices here or there, it's not too bad. But if you have 150 devices, that can take a long time and become very expensive, right? So this is an alternative method. Our technical team still reviews all the evidence and will go back and forth with the manufacturer to make sure that it is meeting all the requirements. So it doesn't just get passed on, right? They have to insert everything, and then our team is still checking to make sure that it will pass. And then once it all looks good, it can get certification as well. So a little bit of the value of certification that we've seen and what we've heard from others, increase in sales, right? We're seeing a lot of consumers these days understand, hey, we need privacy, or hey, we need security, and they're starting to ask for it. There's not a lot of transparency in the market right now when it comes to, well, what should I be buying? And this goes for enterprise consumers as well, right? So there's a couple marks here and there, but this shows exactly what, if you go to our public website, it shows all of our certified devices. We offer a QR code that can be put directly onto either websites or product packaging. And so when it comes in, consumers can scan it, and then it will take them directly to our website, which shows, did they meet X test standard? Did they meet this standard? And you saw the different levels. If you're just meeting level 1, which is perfectly fine, it shows that. If you are maxing out all the levels, it also shows that. We do believe that manufacturers should be rewarded for going above and beyond when it comes to their security. So we make sure to have that transparency for the consumers to see as well. Mitigate liability a little bit, right? In the sense of, hey, this is being checked by a third party, whether it's ioXt or whether it's a third party lab. It's not just a manufacturer coming out and saying, yes, we have this. So helps a little bit. Similar with increased margins, we are seeing, again, consumers pay a little bit more for security prevalent devices. So everyone is becoming a little bit more aware, willing to pay for it for certain products, and seeing a boost in that. We also are doing regulation alignment. We're, for the last year and a half or so, we have been working with the US federal government on the 8425 IoT profile for consumer products. I'll get a little bit more into that, but we also work with the EU, Singapore, Australia, the UK. So what we're doing is we're mapping standards all over the globe. We're including those standards within our profiles. So it's not recreating the wheel. It's helping harmonize all the standards that are already out there, which there's a lot, right? There's a lot of fragmentation. How many certifications do you really need? Do you put them all on your box? If you go out there and get all of them, how expensive is that going to be? So we really try to be a one-stop shop for manufacturers so that they can get, one certification, and that will be good for most or all. Just really, again, working towards harmonization. And, just to make everybody aware, if you're not already, right, there are IoT security threats out there. They do have real impacts on businesses, both, businesses and consumers. And so just a couple data points here, data breaches. Businesses have suffered 50% more cyber attacks from 2022. Brand damage, 46% of organizations suffered brand damage from data breaches. Financial loss, $10.5 trillion loss annually by 2025 due to cyber attacks. You lose customers. So businesses can lose 50% of customers after a data breach. These are real world threats and scenarios that have happened and are currently happening. And so it's always good to be aware. Everyone likes to think, this will never happen to me, and if you have really good security measures, then there's a higher chance that it won't happen to you. But if you're one of the few that I've talked to where they're just hoping it won't happen to them, or they will implement security when their customers ask for it, you're playing with fire, in my opinion. So just being aware that this happens, and it's always good to definitely have security by default and implement extra security measures. So I just want to touch on this really briefly, but as mentioned, we've been working with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is NIST, and the Federal Communications Commission, which is the FCC, on this new program. It is called the U.S. Cyber Trust Mark. And so this is a national labeling program for IoT consumer electronics at this time. It's backed by the US government. They just had a meeting this morning where the commissioners voted on it and it was passed. So it will be coming. There are 10 technical and 4 non-technical criteria, with a lot of sub-criteria underneath that to meet those requirements and obtain certification. Now, why am I telling you about this? It is focused on consumer electronics, like I said now, but they do plan to expand. They're currently focused on expanding to consumer routers. But if this is a successful program, we do predict that this will expand to enterprise and medical products probably within 2 to 3 years even. It seems a little aggressive, but even with their timeline right now, it is a very aggressive timeline. So don't be surprised if you start hearing things in the works. They're essentially laying the foundational work for this program. And so if you hear that they are going into enterprise or OT or IoT, I think it'd be really important to stay on top of that and join the webinars, provide feedback, participate in any working groups that may be created, because those voices are what's going to impact the actual standards that the US government will delegate to what we're calling cyber labeling authorities, which are third parties such as ioXt. So maybe coming, keep your ear to the ground. Again, maybe not right away, but in the next couple of years, can definitely see this happening. They also announced that in January, they are going to be working with more international organizations to harmonize standards across the world. So similar to what we're already doing, they see the fragmentation. They're working towards harmonization with others. This is specifically for the CRA, Cyber Resiliency Act, over in Europe, if you haven't heard of it yet, specifically the UK, and EN 303645. This is already out there. I'm sure it will play a part into it as well. So just to be aware. And the launch of this program is targeted for November 2024. So again, very fast-paced timeline. It's been in the works for about a year and a half, but it is moving quickly. Here are just some of the other global IoT security regulations out there that we have worked with, that we've mapped to, that are within the organization as well. So if you have any questions on what these regulations are, or do you need them, do you not, always feel free to reach out. Computer is frozen. There we go. Sorry. Did it change for you guys too? Okay. All right, good. Looks like it changed. All right, thank you. Technical difficulties, right? Love them. So, okay, this sounds good. You're interested. How do you get involved? How do you join, right? So please go ahead to the ioxtalliance.org website. It'll ask you to log in or sign up. It takes 60 seconds. Very quick and easy form to fill out, and it is also free. So get in while you can, and you never know if that'll ever change, but essentially it is free. There are 2 types of memberships. One is just public. If you just want more information, it gives you certain access. You can pretty much play around with it. You can add some devices and see what that looks like. And otherwise, if you do want to join one of our working groups, then you can do that as well. That is a contributor agreement. Again, it's free, just a couple extra documents and signing saying that you're not going to steal our stuff, and then you'll be able to join. You'll get all of the work group meetings for calendar invites. You'll get access to all the live documents or past documents, depending on which ones you join. And then you'll be able to participate in the work groups. So if you have any questions about this, again, we are looking to expand into OT, IoT. We do have building network controller profile and a lighting network controller profile, but there is always room to grow. Okay, so that is pretty much it from me. So if you do have any interest or you'd like to reach out, please do. You see my email down here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know I threw a lot at everyone, so.
Yeah, thank you, Grace, for the wonderful introduction to ioXt's IoT certification. It's definitely a lot of information, but I think a lot of good information for at least for IoT enthusiasts like me. I know you're talking about these work groups, these task groups that exist now. I believe IoTSF Houston chapter probably has some opportunities there to get involved in the action, right? So I'm going to start the Q&A session. I believe I can just click on this thing and it's going to somehow change everything for everybody. So Q&A has been enabled. So if you feel free to type in your questions, while I have a couple of questions while we wait for questions to come in from our attendees. So one of the questions I have is, I noticed on one of your slides, you had those yellow lines, and they were different for different controls or different requirements. Is that something that you sit together with the manufacturer to come up with the expectations, right? So what constitutes a required, what should meet the criteria, and what you can get by? So who develops that, or who sets those expectations?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it is all dependent on the work groups, right? Who's joining, who's participating, who has the experience. So we do have several connections we'll usually invite into the working groups, but we really do like to have manufacturers who deal with this on a day-to-day basis. They're in these situations, they're dealing with the vulnerabilities or the bugs that are coming out of it. And so we really love to have as many voices as possible to create these standards, because we could make them up as we go, right, and look into it, but we're not the experts on everything, right? So we really do like to have industry come in. It is a little bit of a process, right? Because it is going through, well, what are all the threats, and what are the steps that we need to take in order to fix those threats, right? And make the devices more secure. So there's usually all the fun stuff, all the roles and responsibilities that come with it. You have your chairs and your co-chairs who are running the meetings and getting everybody's feedback. We're working in these documents. We as a group are deciding on, okay, well, this is level 1. This is what everybody should be able to meet, or everybody should be meeting. Sometimes we do like to have them aspirational, right, to a certain extent, so that you are upping the security of these devices and it's not just a very low bar. We want to raise that bar up so that people who are meeting these standards are showing that they are doing a great job at implementing security. But we also, again, there's different levels. And so maybe something is a little bit harder to meet, but should still be included, right? And it should still be a requirement. So the work group is definitely making all these decisions and coming to a consensus. And so there's a lot of good conversation that happen in these work groups.
And a lot of different varieties of devices too, right? So I was thinking about like these cameras that we have, commercial consumer side. We have all of those big name companies that have this camera that you can put on your door, on your doorbell, whatever. it's so many. And so I'm thinking, what do you consider a device? Is that whole system a device, or are you looking at components inside that makes up the device? Like there could be a camera system, there could be a doorbell.
Mhm.
So what kind of devices are you considering when you certify these? And what if these devices are similar, right? So if a company is making about 10 different models of the same device, do they need to go through the certification process for every device, and what does that constitute?
That is a great question because I get this all the time, actually. So thank you for asking that. We do look at a product level or like model level, right? You'll see, okay, well, let me, for example, have a light bulb, right? Or like a light switch. And so you can have the on off light switch, you can have the dimmer, you can have one with a couple different controls, but they all have the same brains, right? Usually the products that have the same brains are under a family of products. And so the brains constitute the radio, the processor, and the firmware or software library. So if a device has all of that the same, but maybe just slightly different features, then we will count that as one device in the sense of pricing, right? And so this is our cert by similarity. If it is the same but looks slightly different, we do ask that that information is actually input into the portal so that when a consumer scans it, then they actually see the picture and understand, oh, yeah, this is my device. Because sometimes that gets a little confusing for consumers if you scan something and it's just, oh, the brains are all the same, but it looks completely different. So we like to
Yeah.
say model level. That's pretty much all included for the most part from what I've seen.
Cool. All right, so I do have a few questions coming in. The first one I have is from Joffrey Alexander. The question is, given that these certifications can assure and educate the public on IoT security awareness, are there plans to implement ioXt certified labels to the approved consumer device so it can gain more notoriety and traction?
Yes, we are. And this is where manufacturers can also help and come in, right? By placing it on product packaging, placing it on websites where consumers are seeing it. But one of the other things that we're doing is working with retailers who are also looking to put this in their stores and looking at, do we want manufacturers to pursue this? So they are also working with manufacturers and saying, hey, we'd really like for our consumers to know that this is of secure products. So there's a little bit of that push. It's not a mandatory program, so there's a little bit of, slow to slow to build, right? Because everyone's like, well, why do I need to have transparency and have a label, right? But we are seeing that consumers are asking for this more, and this helps with the transparency. Along with that, the US Cyber Trust Mark program, as it's backed by the US government, it's an optional program, but they are going to have an education and awareness campaign. And so we're working with them on that. I don't know how much the government's going to do versus, industry with manufacturers, our own marketing, the retailers, we've pulled them in. So I think that will have a greater potential, especially, everybody loves to have the US government back stuff because then it's extra safe, right? I don't know if that's fully there, but it does help. So I do think that you're going to see a jump in awareness. And so I think that this can help, if you don't want to necessarily do the US Cyber Trust Mark one, I think it's just good to look at ioXt in general certification because, again, the awareness as the US Cyber Trust Mark is rolled out, I think consumers will become aware of like, oh, I can actually look for something, right? We're mostly B2B. So it's hard for us to reach those consumers unless the manufacturers are specifically reaching out to them because most consumers don't know standards and technology fun lingo, but we're working on it. And so it's definitely on its way. If you're interested and want more people to hear about it and learn about it, reach out. I'd love to work with you guys and look at what that could look like.
Great. Thank you for that, Grace. So I do have a question about labels creating awareness, which we just answered, but kind of taking it to the I guess expectations and to the consumer side. So Mike Welch has a question and a comment.
Yeah.
So I'll read the question first. It says, as the focus is cyber defense and resilience, I assume the profile work is a ongoing work because threats change. Our threats landscape is always changing, and expectations are changing. So, do you want to comment on that a little bit before we go to the next one?
Yes, no, this is actually very important because we even say ourselves that as soon as you finalize a profile, it's already old, right? Because you can do all that work and it's ever changing. The door is always revolving when it comes to cybersecurity. There's new threats every day. The cyber criminals are getting smarter and they're implementing new tasks. You're seeing AI is coming into play as well, right? So there's always room to grow, always room to build. We are, using our work groups as that. So as more threats come about, more vulnerabilities are known. We take that into account. We go back to the work groups and we say, hey, let's talk about this. How do we implement? So we may update certain test cases. We may add new test cases. We may delete old ones that nobody does that anymore. So yes, we do that, and I think that that's probably one of the most important tasks that we like to do.
Okay. The other comment I have here is on the false sense of security. So, I've been in the security business for, I say business, but really on the end side, the end user side. And I realized that, sometimes these products and services that we use can give us this false sense of security, and we can get used to it, thinking that we're all protected. So, are there any kind of things built into these certifications that will provide whoever this consumer or manufacturer to be able to say, okay, I just don't want to take the word for it, right? Because you've gone through all rigorous testing and so what is there in these certifications that will help us to not have that false sense of security?
Yeah, so two things that I specifically want to mention for this. One is that we have a live QR code. So, what this means is that as you're updating your firmware or software versions, we do ask that manufacturers update at least once a year. Um, and the recertification is free of charge. So update as much as you want if you'd like. But we do like to have that because then you can see if something drops in security, maybe you maxed it out and that's 4 levels and now you only have 3 levels. That will update with the QR code on our product website. So if that's the case, you don't have to redo any of the boxing or the website. That live QR code will update in real time, or vice versa, right? You had the minimum required certification, and all of a sudden you're able to max everything out, right? And so now that updates real time, so that you don't have to do anything. You're just getting recertified for every new firmware or software version that's applicable. The second part is that we focus on certain components. So the device is one component, right? And so we think devices are very important. We also think that mobile apps are important. So we have not just mobile app, but also VPN profiles. But that helps where, say, one of our customers is a Pharaoh. And so they have their app that is certified and their devices that are certified. So then again, depending on where you go, you can scan and see that as a whole, they are certified and safe. Each component is. There's a third one that is cloud. We're still working on this portion. But I think that that's also an important component, right? So that the whole ecosystem is certified. And I think that's where consumers might get a little confused, because I think if they see one certification, maybe they think everything is certified. Other consumers don't really know or don't care. They just want to see some type of binary label, which is what this also provides. So if it has it, is it secure? Yes. If it's not, doesn't mean it's not secure, but there's just no transparency around it at that time, right? So I think with that, there is a sense that we're seeing or hearing about that maybe consumers need to be more educated on. Is it just the device? Is it the mobile app? Is it the cloud? Is it the whole IoT product and its ecosystem, or is it just one part? So it gets a little technical, which is why I hesitate to just jump in and be like, yeah, let's tell them how much security is in the device or all the different components. I mean, you don't want to overwhelm the consumers, right? And so that is an important piece. Usually, if you can try to keep it as simple and straightforward as possible, and or having that extra layer where if they want to find out more information, they can scan or click to learn more. But I think there's a little bit of awareness piece that still needs to be worked on with that.
Okay, so you're talking about the QR codes. Is this something that the device manufacturer puts on the devices, or is it something that they use to recertify? Their so who's looking at these QR codes? Is it something that the end users get to access, or can you talk a little bit about the QR codes?
Yes, the QR codes are definitely end user facing, right? So you can put that on websites where your customers can scan it directly from there. You can put it directly on the packaging. You can use it in marketing material. It's essentially wherever you want to make awareness about it. But if you do want to update, you can just go directly into the ioXt portal, make your updates. And again, that QR code will update in real time as you make those changes, and it becomes accepted from our end.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
So I have another question here about the device itself. If the device falls out of compliance for various reasons, do the manufacturer lose the certification right away with the QR code, shows, oh, it's not meeting those requirements? Or does it happen instantly, or what's the process on that?
Yeah, so that's a good question too. You do not lose certification immediately because we all know that devices are not going to be 100% secure, right? With the state of the world and what's going on, we know that it's not 100% safe. So we do allow a grace period. So what does that look like? We have what we call a vulnerability reporting program. This is where anyone can come in, whether that is an organization such as HackerOne or BugCrowd. We've also utilized students in the past, right, who are in their classes and looking into these types of things, or just anyone off the internet. They can also do this. So they will see a product that is certified. They can dispute it. Our team will evaluate to make sure that the dispute is valid. If it is, we then contact the manufacturer immediately and let them know, hey, a vulnerability has been found. One instance is like Log4j, right? Really high risk, impacting everything. Lots of manufacturers jumped on it right away once it was reported. But so we give 90 days essentially for everything to be fixed. So starting from communication to the manufacturer, they have 90 days to go in, fix the vulnerability with a patch, and update the system, and then obviously send us all their evidence and findings so that we can confirm it, and then they can keep the certification. If they do not do that within 90 days, then they are at risk of losing the certification. But again, 90 days is a lot of time. There are some bigger patches that do require, a little bit of time to fix and update. But for the most part, our manufacturers are very good about fixing things. I would say probably with even like 24 to 48 hours.
Wow.
So hopefully that makes sense. But everyone's like, oh my gosh, am I going to lose certification right away? And it's like, no.
Yeah.
We understand. Here's your grace period. Don't freak out.
That's great. So I do have a follow-up question on that. So
Yeah.
Mike Welch asks, if the product does not fall, or sorry, product does fall out of certification, does the consumer gets notified proactively or become aware of that that they're out
So
of compliance?
yeah, another good question. I believe the notification to customers is up to the manufacturer, whether they want to do that or not. But what we'll do on our end is that we will deactivate that product from our public website. So if someone goes to scan it, it will say this product is no longer certified, or, I don't know if we have language that says like decertified or lost compliance, but it will say, no longer certified, and just big X on the screen. So that is a way for consumers to know, but they'd have to scan the QR code to know. Again, manufacturers on them to communicate that to their customers.
Cool. Just wanted to let everybody know that I know there was a comment about somebody trying to leave the meeting. So this is being recorded, so we will post this on our LinkedIn group, on the forum or our LinkedIn chapter. So yeah, this is you can come back to it afterwards. I do have another question, and this is about the process of creating a profile for a device. So if you don't mind getting into a little bit in detail, a little bit, about a how long does it take to create a profile, and anything you want to add to that profile creation process?
Yes. So I think I mentioned it's a little bit of a lengthy process. We do like to have at least 5 manufacturers who are involved. So, that is a good way to have uh, competition with each other so that no one is skewing the standards to make it a valuable profile just for them. And so with that, we have a consensus. We all come together. It's like, okay, let's coordinate the meetings, right? Are we meeting once a week, every other week, once a month? We let the group set the pace. Usually we're meeting every other week. And then again, some people will be assigned roles such as chair, co-chair. Others can just kind of pop in and out as they please, depending on their commitments and what they have time for. So we do understand that this is voluntary, and we appreciate anybody's time that they can give to us. And so from there, what we've seen in the past is usually about 9 months to go through everything. And again, this is on a every other week time frame. If you're meeting just once a month, that's obviously going to take a lot more time. Once a week, you can maybe get it a little bit less. So again, on average, it's about 9 months. It does go through the process where we open it up to our compliance group. And so this is anybody and everybody who wants to join that compliance meeting. Once it's all finished, will go through it for usually several meetings, and then they understand. They're usually asking questions, kind of poking holes on it to make sure that it's a very sound profile. And again, getting those other perspectives, and not just when you have your blinders on, like, oh, well, I work in the industry and this is how we do it. You all get in your own little sound bubble. So when we expand that out and open it up, other people can come in, and if it all makes sense, then we look at putting it through the process to get it approved. And then once it's approved, we put that into the ioXt portal, and people can start certifying it. Manufacturers can start certifying against it almost immediately, probably a 72-hour period, but very quickly after that.
All right, so I guess we still have about 10-15 minutes here, so we may be able to take a couple more questions. I do have a question about manufacturers. So manufacturers who are considering going through with the ioXt certification, what kind of resources and support does ioXt Alliance provide to help them streamline the process, and also go through the certification process?
Yes, so we have a great team. You can reach out to me personally if you want to, but our team does a really good job at introducing the ioXt portal, walking you through, making sure you understand where all the resources are. We've got plenty of documentation. We have some videos. We've got personal people that can walk through it with you. Once you do it once, pretty much just do the same thing over and over again, and providing different results. So once you kind of get the hang of it pretty quickly. But after that, if there are any issues, you can reach out to the team. Again, when it comes to the certification process, whether it's the labs or the verified self-attestation, we do have a technical team that is reviewing, that is communicating. If there's anything that's left out or missing or needs clarification, we are in direct contact so that manufacturers understand why they are or are not passing. There's usually at least one, if not multiple calls where we're walking through and saying, hey, we need this, this looks good. And then the manufacturer is very aware why they are or not getting certification. So plenty of resources. And yeah, I mean, again, I'm always available if anybody ever has any questions or needs to call me, reach out with a quick question too.
All right, I'm going to go through the Q&A one more time to see if I missed anything. Looks like we covered pretty much all the questions. Joffrin says this was very informative, so he's thanking you, Grace, and the IoTSF Houston chapter. So before we conclude today's webinar, Grace, I don't know if you had any other comments you wanted to share with everybody.
Yeah, I really just wanted to thank everyone for letting me join the IoTSF webinar today. And if you do have any questions or you are interested, then please definitely feel free to reach out because we are always wanting to expand. I do see IoT and OT coming into play. More smart building, smart city. That is, I think, going to be a big deal in the future. So better to get ahead of it, and then just continue to update. Because if you don't do it right, then somebody else is going to do it. And then eventually you're just going to have to follow their rules. So be a lot more fun and easier if you made the rules yourselves, right?
All right. Thank you again, Grace. I want to extend heartfelt gratitude to you for sharing your invaluable insights, and your passion for enhancing IoT security and dedication is clearly visible. And thank you for inspiring. Also, on behalf of IoTSF Houston Chapter, our attendees, I want to thank all of our attendees. Thank you for giving us your time and energy. Also, if you're interested, you can get involved in some of our IoTSF Houston activities. Here, we are local to Houston. We are looking at doing a in-person event in April. That's April, third week of April. So we usually keep our webinars and in-person events on the third Thursday of the month. So April 18th is the next date. You'll see more information posted on LinkedIn and by email. With that, I don't have anything else to share other than everybody have a safe and a wonderful day.